Let me just come up with this question. I need you to make this clarification, Professor. That you rightly said that the governors are the chief security officers of their states, but really, in reality, they have no authority over security apparatus. But we also know that these same governors, if they have an interest, they know how to push and get those interests. What I'm asking is, if your state is challenged, if your region is challenged, and you know you are not in charge of the police and all that, are we saying that the governors cannot push and exert their pressure to ensure that the federal government cave in certain areas? Or is it that we all agree that, look, let's keep moving, let's keep running the nation the way it is, so long we are not the ones that are being killed. So let's keep running the way it is.
There are two sides to this conversation. The first is about whether or not the Nigerian Governors Forum is not just a political platform. If it is a platform that should represent the interests of the citizens that they serve or they govern, they should have the capacity to engage the federal government. We've seen them do that with FARC. When they are shortchanged, they go to court. And at several instances, they won. Now, they need to activate that. But when it comes to some other issues, they are divided along party lines. Who is the chairman of the Governors Forum? What is his relationship with the federal government? What is the body language of the federal government when it comes to the issue in a particular state? What is the interest of the federal government when it comes to the issue in a particular state? The second is about citizens' agency. Can citizens mobilize themselves to demand accountability, to get government to do the right thing? Yes, to the extent that we see these problems as a Nigerian problem. Look at ordinary protests. Protests don't succeed because they are defined along ethnic and religious lines. And I gave you an example. Those who protested against Jonathan years ago were the same people saying, pray for our leaders today. Tomorrow, a president will come. The same people that are saying, pray for our leaders today will be the ones saying, God says, you should not allow wicked leaders to govern. Get them out. So that inconsistency in articulating and mobilizing or harnessing critical voices to demand good governance in Nigeria is the major challenge that we face as a people. And that's why we have the kind of characters that we have today at the National Assembly. They have unfortunately become rubber stamps, because what you see happening today should not even happen. And I will just give you one example. In this same country, the United States Congress organized a public hearing on killings in Nigeria. As I speak now, the National Assembly of this country has not uttered a word on that. That decision by the US Congress on its own borders on the sovereignty of Nigeria. But the National Assembly is mute because they are not concerned. That's to tell you the kind of characters that we have presiding over law and order.
But Professor, we see at several points in time, lawmakers rise, to state these issues of the attack in their state, and recommendations are made with resolutions. So is it completely right to say that they are not concerned about this because they are always raising these issues whenever they are attacked?
They are not concerned to the extent that the responsibility of the National Assembly is not just about resolution. They have oversight responsibilities. We need boots on the ground. We need shoes on the ground. They need to go to that place. They have the power to hold the executive accountable. But many of them are afraid of recall, or they might not come back. And we've seen what happened to people like Udaji Kazori. We've seen what happened to many other members of the National Assembly who were forthright in speaking about the ills of our society and what government should be seen to be doing. But unfortunately, they were denied tickets to come back to the National Assembly. It also boils down to getting citizens to understand that if we don't take our destiny serious by ensuring that we fight to get the right people to represent us, we will continue this cycle of complaint. And this is something that is not rocket science.
But
we
Professor,
can do it.
The National Assembly ordered an inquiry into the statements on security credited to the U.S. congressman a few weeks before they proceeded on their break. Doesn't that also count for something?
It doesn't count because we are talking of an inquiry that happened. There was a public hearing in the Congress of the United States, not a statement now. That statement is an afterthought. On the day that public hearing happened, what did the National Assembly do? If I am the Speaker or the Senate President, I would write to the Embassy of the United States expressing displeasure or taking exception to an encroachment on the sovereignty of the Nigerian state in the context of what has happened. But you see, the flip side to it is, if you know that you are guilty of not doing what was discussed there in terms of effectiveness in security provisioning, then you cannot muster the kind of bravery I'm talking about to even call the U.S. Embassy or U.S. Congress to order, because it has failed. So the National Assembly have a responsibility, and this responsibility must be discharged in a way that restores trust and hope on democratic governance in Nigeria, because people are saying under the military this will not happen. That's a vote of no confidence on democracy. Prof, if we allow that to happen.
Prof, now let's look at Plateau State that the governor just talked about taking over communities, and the narrative out there now is it's because of the economic wealth in those communities. You have people sending the natives or the residents away so that they can take them over. Now, in this circumstance, what should the people, what should the government of Plateau State, and what should the military in Plateau State do to help restore normalcy to those communities?
Under President Muhammadu Buhari, I was a co-drafter of the National Livestock Transformation Plan. It was a rare privilege to be part of that process of looking at how sustainable solutions will be crafted in responding to the farmer-herder conflict. And from the perspective of peace building, law and order, there's a section in that plan where we talked about resettling displaced people, that the federal government must, as a matter of urgency, prioritize the return of people to their ancestral land, dignified return. It would be unfortunate if today we are saying the federal government cannot go to communities where people have been displaced to get them back to their communities. It means government has ceded its own sovereignty. And I think for me, that is something the federal government must do. There's no state governor who can do that. From Zamfara to Katsina to Kaduna to Borno to Yobe, no state governor can activate and implement that policy. You need the federal government to take primary responsibility for that. Most of these communities that have been displaced are communities that are agrarian in nature, are communities that are fertile, are communities that are contributing to the GDP of this country in terms of food production. So by design or by default, by not doing that, the federal government or the Nigerian state is contributing to food insecurity in the country, contributing to generalized insecurity in the country, contributing to poverty in the country, and contributing to the hopelessness and the misery that we see is defining the everyday lives of Nigerians.
Well, Professor, we've seen displaced families living in very poor conditions in temporary camps. Why does it seem like there is no proper system in place to help them?
In 2001, the Obasanjo administration designed what they call the National Disaster Response Plan. And I've gone through that plan. It's a robust plan for coordination, for responsibilities that deals with disaster of all magnitude and nature. But that document has not been fully harnessed. The Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs was established. And the question will be, to what extent did the government review the National Disaster Response Plan and the place of NEMA and the Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs in looking at how to get a comprehensive response plan for disaster management? And this disaster management plan should be one that is preemptive, to the extent that you cannot sit down and get confronted with a disaster challenge only for people to be in the camps for months while you wait for donors to bring in money before you begin to help these individuals. I think for me, we need to really take time to review our capacity, our infrastructure for disaster response. One of the governors was telling me that, see, even we as governors are traumatized. Now you are also dealing with a country that is traumatized. How do we deal with issue of trauma? Because part of the problem we are having today is that victims that we see today will be criminals tomorrow. What kind of mental health support are we giving them with a view to ensuring that we restore their dignity and humanity? Because if they pass through what we see through these camps, in terms of their status as displaced people that are hopeless, that are living in misery, yet the same government officials who go there to visit them come in 10, 20 jeeps. Tomorrow they will believe that since I'm hopeless, criminality is the best way to respond to my own insecurity. Right. So they need that mental health support. Unfortunately, this is one area that Nigeria is lacking when it comes to mental health provisioning and support. We have a mental health act in the country, but to what extent are we investing in mental health? We only see it as a hospital responsibility. Right. What is the nature of community engagement we are having from the perspective of integrating mental health in security provisioning?